Well, I'm going to be here.
You're not able to leave yet. So Kalle was very good. I don't know if you noticed the 5 and the 0. That's a kind of a sign that we made. And if the speakers are able to stick to it, that means that there is room for questions. So we said in the age of equality that there will be possibilities for questions from the audience and questions that people could send in. I have a really hard time with there's a light, but if I see, I'll take one question from the audience and one from my screen. Right there, you're the first one and you get the question. This is a learning lesson, people. First hand wins.
Thank you. I'm stay sitting, it saves time. I was in another conference 2 weeks ago, and the question was open access to change societies and closed access to change or development change societies. Example, Brazil. Changing is benefiting those who induce change, but it's a very small elite. It's a closed access society. And even Lula and Rousseff didn't change this. So what would be your recipe for that?
So of course, it's difficult to have a recipe that can sort of work from outside. I just can share that I've, like everybody here, been on conferences or events on inclusive growth that are sort of behind fences. And I was warned by the organizers that I shouldn't move outside the fence because there were poor people outside. Of course, I didn't obey what they said, but you're right. So I know more about the experiences of European countries in this. And these countries that have experienced more inclusive growth have been countries that organized from bottom up. And there were social organizations, for example, union movements that sort of included people. In many countries, including Brazil, sort of unions are sort of upper-class institutions or middle-class institutions. In Northern Europe, these institutions, they were organized from bottom up and they included everybody. And I think that is important because it's kind of quasi-democratic institutions in the sense that they have to obey some of the wishes of their members. And I think at least that is... social organization is a key word here. And very often, if you take this, I think, false competitive paradigm that prices and cost are the basic objects for competition, then you've never seen social organization as part of the creative destruction. That this is one way that you can include people in the benefits of development. And so I think the message from Northern Europe is that this helps also development in itself. And so I would say social organization. For example, the disappointing development in South Africa, with the strong unions, played a tremendous progressive role against apartheid. After 1994, there's very little happening that we had expected. On the other side, there's more establishment of a black upper class, and it's disappointing in many other aspects. When you travel, I guess this is true for everybody here, that why can't they remove the slums? It was so easy. They have idle people who can do the work, and it can't cost much to sort of construct better houses in a cheap way. Similar policies that were done, say, in Sweden just after the Second World War, and for sure in Norway. There was a social movement of building houses, and the houses that were built, they were subsidized. But they were very clever in the policy because they said, this is the house, but if you're going to have the subsidy, it's going to be a small house. So that meant that the rich, they didn't take the subsidy because they didn't want to have a small house. But it wasn't it wasn't means tested. So I think these things to think self-selection, universal policies, social organization. I think these things are the keywords.
Thank you so much. I'm going out on a whim here because we have 4 minutes. 3 minutes left of the session before the next session. And I've had a question on my sent from an anonymous person in the audience, and it would be I don't think that this is a question that you can answer in an entire lifetime. So I wonder if you could do it in 2 minutes with a yes or a no. I don't think so. But let me try you. Is equality, economic equality, possible under capitalism, and how? Thank you for
so
whoever posted that question. You'll get the next lecture.
So I think the honest answer is yes. And what is the evidence? Well, look across countries in the world. Which countries have the most equality? It is the countries most exposed to global competition. They are small, open economies. They are competing in a global market. They are, in that sense, exposed to, how should we say, capitalist forces more than other countries. The US, that's a big, closed economy. They can do much more because they're big enough to do themselves. So let's keep it to the small, open economy. They have the smallest wage differentials. They have the most generous welfare states. They have the highest unionization. They have the most universal welfare states arrangement. They have all these things in common. Why is that? Because it is a competitive advantage to have some of these things. Because we don't compete enough in institutions. We compete with prices and costs because somebody told us that is the wise thing to do. But the wise thing to do is to compete by organizing the labor force in a different way. In Northern European countries, that was done by giving people autonomy, more power at the local level. And then they were not so much supervised. You could save on administration and so on. It was done by welfare policies that offered schooling for everybody, same school, same houses, same spouses. No, I'm kidding. So I think the basic message is this. That look at the small open economies. Small economies have other advantages because it's easier to coordinate in small economies. But the fact that they compete on international markets and can coordinate inside the country is evidence for the brute fact that equality is possible. It is, so people who say it isn't, they are saying it out of self-interest maybe.
Thank you so much. That was a very clear answer. Thank you for a great introduction.